This is the launch of a new webinar series for Future Generations University. We designed this series as a forum to share accessible digital tools that can help you share your message and mission with your wider community. And so we've designed a multi-session series that each kind of build on the last, but they can also be standalone sessions. So for all of you who are joining us this morning, you have automatically registered for the entire series. So you don't have to do anything further. You will get reminders week to week to join us. And for those who may not be able to join every time, but wish to, all of these sessions will be recorded. We will be sharing both the recordings, the presentation decks, and we also have some rich supplemental resource material and handouts that will be shared. So this will be a living kind of library of resources. So this morning we have a curveball for you all. Our presenter for today's session had a very last minute change and is unable to make it today. But he will be here next week for the in-depth photography session. So we decided, however, we wanted to still meet this morning, welcome you and thank you for participating and for your interest, and spend about 15 or 20 minutes together. I do have one photo resource shared by the founder of the university and one of our endowed professors and an incredible photographer, Daniel Taylor, that I'll go through and I'll share with you guys this morning. I want to open it up for you to share the questions that you brought with you this morning so we can take that into account when we meet next week to go more in depth on photography and photo editing. So it's a little bit more targeted to those of you who are with us today. And Lindsay and I, who we with our teammate Chris Reiser, we co-created this webinar series. I thought we could take the opportunity this morning to talk about the series as a whole and a little bit of our reasoning of why we chose the different digital toolkits that we'll be discussing, and just have a little bit of a behind the scenes look at this webinar before it officially gets launched. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. And while I'm doing that, if you will use the chat function to share your interests in photography, what are your needs, or what are the things that you came into this morning wanting to learn more about? And Lindsay and I will be able to capture those. And I also realized I didn't introduce myself. My original role this morning was to introduce the presenter. So my name is Deborah Sossewer. I am the Senior Director of Strategic Communications at Future Generations University. My background is in fine art, not photography, but in printmaking, and I have used a lot of photographic processes in my artwork. And as the person charged with university communications, taking photos, editing photos, and using photos and photographic media is it's a cornerstone of the content creation, not only for this university, but for any enterprise.
Um,
Go ahead,
we
Lindsay.
epically failed at this, Deborah, the two communications people on this call. I know most everyone on the call. However, there's a few of you that I have not had the pleasure of meeting. And so my name is Lindsay Kazarek. I am our recruitment and communications associate, but I am also a master's student. And so I'm in class with lots of you, and that's awesome. I love getting to share class time, but I wanted to take the time to introduce myself to the few of you that I have not had the opportunity to meet. And I work very closely with Deborah on a daily basis. So this is a really special opportunity for all of us to be here together, but also work together on this series. And so as Deborah mentioned, please put your questions and your comments in the chat because we want this series to work for all of you. We want this to serve you. And so Deborah is really the one that's going to steer this ship. And so we're going to look at the comments and the chat and make sure that we do our best to cater this to what you need. So if you have a question, if there's something that you really need help with in pulling together a presentation for class or a resource that you're working on in your community, this is the space to let us know so that we can help gather as much of those ancillary resources and put them in this space for you. And if we're in class together and you're like, oh, hey, during the Amplify webinar series, I saw this, but I didn't think of it in time to put it in there. You can also feel free to like ping me in class and tell me. That's totally cool too. But I just wanted to make note of that. I will be watching the chat and the Q&A. I'm going to turn things back over to Deborah. I'm super excited to be here with all of you today.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yes, well said and well shared. So on your screen, you'll see a document that says photography advice, making visual images to fit your needs. And when Daniel shared this with me, I was so excited to see kind of the way that he thought through photography, because what he really pointed out wasn't so much a skill set about how to take a good photograph, what is the, what kind of equipment you might have. But the first thing you start off with is why you're taking the photograph. What is the end goal of communication that that photograph needs to convey? So he makes the designation of taking a picture where you're snapping something that exists versus making a picture where you are actually positioning yourself in the context of your physical reality to create the imagery that will serve you. So he kind of goes on to talk about maybe what your typical pictures depict, people or place. In my own personal experience, I'm a people person. And so when I travel with friends, I take pictures of them in the space. But one of my best friends is not a people person. And she actually makes it a point. She prefers pictures of landscapes or monuments or buildings or animals, but without people in them. So that's like in terms of a personal preference. But as you're thinking about the kind of photographic needs that you have for whatever project you're working on, those are some of the things to think about. Why and what needs to be in the image. And so Daniel describes 3 types of making. One is verity, which is showing history in action. One is photography as a form of art, which kind of is more maybe emotive. It's symbolic, kind of bringing the viewer into a mental space that they may not otherwise have entered without viewing that image, or storytelling. And so this would be helpful with journalistic or other kind of narrative forms. So this is supplemental to usually like writing or audio communications. So part of the making of an image versus taking of it is, again, getting clear in your mind why you're taking the image. And there are some different tools that artists tend to use, but your viewfinder itself creates a box, and you can actually use that to, when you limit what you're looking at and you're using a box, what a lot of drawing artists will do is they'll actually create like a paper box, and they'll use that to look around a still life or look around the landscape. And it actually just helps your brain bring some things into focus that may not otherwise have been in focus, because our brains are designed to help us interact and survive in the world. But when you go into making a photograph, you're switching your brain function into thinking about what you're visually seeing within a confined space. And so whatever is in that confined space becomes more meaningful to your mind's eye. Daniel also has information. He has incredible photographic equipment. What we're going to do in this series is speak more to how you can take and edit good images using a mobile device. Our goal, at least with this first season of this series, is to be informative and also accessible. And as we hear from you about what your needs are, what your interests are, we're very interested on the staff side of doing a second season of this series that maybe dives a little bit deeper. So what we'll talk about next week is not actual photographic equipment, but more mobile photography considerations. But in the future, if people do have a real interest in types of cameras, we'll have an opportunity perhaps to go deeper into that subject. But it is still included in this handout, which you will receive so that you can have that information if you need it. So the composition of the image is not just what you're looking to show, that's your subject. It also includes the context that your subject lives within, and that's considered the background of your photograph. So a helpful tip from me as someone who's taken a lot of photos for my work, I get so, and again, I mentioned this before, I'm a people person. So I get very focused on a person's face or their body. And then I don't notice, like they might be sitting at a table and they have a big water bottle sitting right in front of them. And so that's something I've had to like take a step back and look not only at the subject, but the context in the background. Lindsay.
Thanks, Deborah. For those of us that are in Daniel's scale class, this past week, you will remember as we were reviewing our labs, Daniel was highly critical of my lab, specifically pointing out the pictures on my slide where there were pictures of Luke, Joey, and Professor Hammett. And he specifically highlighted the picture on the very next slide, which was a picture of our former researcher, Kate Photos, with a producer at Tonalaway Farm, and they were putting the tubing into a collection tank and collecting walnut syrup. And Daniel specifically highlighted that even though he really likes looking at his son and Joey Alloy and Professor Hammett posed standing with our stands, that it was not a good picture for me to use because it was posed and it did not capture any action. However, the picture on the very next slide, which was our researcher and a producer, it was significantly more interesting and it captured action. And Daniel went on for about 5 minutes talking about this. This right here, if you were in class during that moment, is exactly what Deborah is talking about here. And so if we all can do better at being more mindful of what we are capturing, posed pictures versus the context of what we are capturing in them, that will elevate the presentation or whatever it is that we are trying to communicate. I did not do a very good job of that last week, and Daniel pointed that out.
I would rather say not that you didn't do a good job of that, Lindsay, but that with Daniel's helpful feedback, you now know how to better use the photos to communicate what you want to communicate.
Yes, yes, it was a fantastic learning moment.
You either win or you learn. Those are the only two outcomes of things that ever happen to you. So yeah, so Daniel, he's truly an expert, and sometimes that doesn't come, sometimes it can hit you with a hammer, but it's still helpful to learn. And I'm so pleased that he shared this resource with us and that we'll share it with you. But yeah, you'll read through, and there's he has some simple tips on composition. He has a couple of pointers for people, such as it's better to have a darker photograph than a photograph with too much light. This will be discussed next week, but when you're going to do photo editing, the amount of light in the photograph is called exposure. So your exposure to the light. Less exposure is a darker photo, and it's easier to lighten a photo and make it look good when it's overexposed, and that's photographs that look very washed out. There's not a lot of contrast between what's light and dark. Everything is really light. It is a lot harder, and it looks a lot worse to try to edit and manipulate that photo. So a lower light is going to be better than too much light. And then when you are capturing people, and so Lindsay just used the example of a pose photograph versus kind of that verity, that action shot photograph. When you're trying to get action shots of people, Daniel points out that when you're taking a photograph while smiling, that actually helps your subject relax a little bit more. And what I have found when I've had to, take photos of people is getting a little people, if they see that you have your phone up to take a picture, they tend to stiffen up a little bit, or they tend to kind of turn to you and pose. I mean, and I do this as well. It's just a very human thing. But what I found is that when you engage the person and just not even talk about taking the image, but just say, "Oh, wait, what are you doing?" Or, just any way to get them to talk especially about themselves or what their action is. It kind of allows for a more relaxed and a more natural image to be taken. And it kind of builds a little bit of trust. So if you're someone who is a little bit introverted, and yet you need to go into the field and take images, it can be helpful to come up with just one or two or three questions that are kind of innocuous, that you can go up to a person and ask about them, and who they are, if they've been there before, or if they've been involved in the organization for a long time, or anything that's appropriate to the context in which you're taking the image. And once you get people talking a little bit, they loosen up, and then you can kind of step back, and then you can take images. Especially when we talk about mobile photography, the beauty of our phones and the beauty of digital photography is the ability to take multiple images and then go back through and cull out the images that you don't need, or choose the right image for what you do need. So the last thing I'll say, because the rest of this handout, as I'm scrolling down, you can see that it's not only handy tips, but it also gives you some applied exercises. So these are some images that Daniel or other members of the Future Generations University team have taken. And you can kind of see, and you get a chance to look at each image and think about it critically and write that down. And as you use this as an exercise, it will help you then consider the type of photography or the type of images that you want to make when you're going out into the field. So this image here with a group of people in a circle, it's good because it shows the group, it shows community, and it's not usually a good practice to show the back of people's heads, but because the vast majority of the picture shows the front of people's faces, and because it's circular, you can get away with that. And I will also say what I'm noticing is almost all of these images have a horizontal or landscape orientation. And I would say, when in doubt, make sure that your camera is taking the picture as a horizontal. That's a lot easier to like, that's what our computer screens, that's what a lot of our tablets, even if they're if we're holding like an ebook or a tablet, or even your phone itself, it usually is in what's called portrait or a vertical orientation. Almost all image layouts that in videos call for the landscape orientation. And it's a lot easier to crop it in than to have a tall, skinny photograph and try to have that fill a larger, wider space. So I'm going to stop sharing that and give us a little bit of time to draw attention to the chat. Lindsay, what have you been capturing from our colleagues here?
So they want to know, they want to be better at capturing the right moments and figuring out how to do it better. Can you
Okay.
talk a little bit about that, Deborah?
Yeah. So some of the things that can be a challenge is that the moments where everyone is really caught up are so infectious that you can get caught up as well. I don't know how many times I've been in a really rich experience and realized later I'm like, I didn't take a single image, I didn't take a single photo of what was going on. So I think one of the things is, again, it's like a mindset going into the space. If you know that taking images is part of your job for whatever outcome, even if it's a self-imposed job, um, some of it is going to be having that, having your, if we're using phones, having it right there in your hand so that you just keep it handy and out with you. Um, that's not how to take it better, but that's just how to be, like how to have some reminders so that you can kind of recall that that's the function for you in that moment. Um, some of the things that I will do is I will kind of take my mobile device and I will actually tilt it from left to right as I take photographs. Because what will end up happening too is a lot of people will take a picture and they'll just hold the phone or the camera in the same spot, just and they'll expect the people in front of the camera to move. But as if you're going into a space and if you have the mobility to do so, you can either walk slightly to the left or right, and you can capture different angles. If you are in a seated position and don't have that mobility, if you use your phone, the other thing is it's better to angle. It kind of depends. The considerations for people to take a posed photograph are not the same as the considerations when you're taking a photograph of people in action. So for me, if I'm posing for a photograph, even as I'm posing, as I have my cameras on top of my computer and I look up and I have a little bit of a nicer facial profile. Whereas if you take a picture from, if you're looking up at a person, right, that may not be as flattering for all individuals. However, some of the examples on the handout that Daniel created, there is something really heroic about an image of people who are kind of a little bit larger than life and that you're looking up at them. So a lot of it is psychology. When you look down on your subjects, if they're people, it creates a sense of superiority. If you're looking up at people and if they take up the frame more, if the background seems more diminished and the foreground is the human figures, that creates a sense of monumentality. That creates a sense of large scale and importance. So those are some of the considerations. I hope that helps answer the question. And knowing these questions too, and with some other photographic experts that we'll bring in with our presenter next week, we can dive deeper into how to take it better.
Um, so another question just popped into the chat, but before we move on to that, I wanted to just touch on this a little bit more. So Amber wants to really capture emotion and storytelling with picture, and this really dovetails onto the question that we just talked about. And I think with a lot of this, we will really build upon these skill sets with the other sessions that we will have in our digital skills sessions. This isn't all going to happen with just photography. The storytelling components that come into play will sort of naturally evolve in the photography once you figure those things out. The emotional component of it sort of happens once you figure out how to tell that story. And so once we continue to go through the rest of our series, Amber, and I know this isn't probably the answer that you're looking for in this moment, and I apologize, but we will cover all of that. Because unfortunately, just taking one picture or taking a few pictures is not going to tell that whole story. There's a little bit more to it. But I understand what you're asking, and I understand why you're wanting to get there. So Corey asked, is there a way to get better picture quality when I zoom in on my camera phone? It's definitely not the best one. He
Yeah.
also needs a ton of help with Canva.
Well, you've come to the right place. Or you will do when we do Canva in 2 weeks. Yeah, and to touch on that too, Amber, um, things that things that are emotionally evocative in pictures include eyes and close facial features. So if you're wanting to evoke emotion, you want to get a little closer to your subject and kind of show sort of the expression in the eyes is really helpful, just as a quick tool. The other thing that is very emotionally evocative is color. So if you are have an opportunity to use a color photograph, um, your warm colors, which are the colors of the sun, yellows, reds, oranges, those tend to create a happier, more uplifting, fiery, angry feeling. So it can kind of range like kind of high level, like more manic emotional state from, from happy to, exercise in whatever way. And your cooler colors, your blues, greens, and purples, those tend to be more somber. Those tend to be quieter colors, cooler colors, and those can also evoke emotions. There's a reason why in the US and in I think in the English language, there is a saying like when you feel sad, the saying is you feel blue. And that's actually very connected. Corey, to take a better photograph when you're zooming in, you need a platform for your phone. Holding it in your hand is really hard in Zoom because the minute movement, even as you're breathing, it causes motion. And that's what makes the it's all your lens is already trying to capture something crisply, but when you zoom in, that's a little bit more compromised. So if you don't have a platform, if you don't have a tripod even if one that you make on your own, the best thing to do is to stand with your legs braced apart, take a deep breath and hold your breath while you take the photo. And that will give you both like kind of a stance in your body that's stronger, and the act of breathing moves your body. And so if you just hold your breath while you take it, you're doing everything you can to control your own physical body. Um, the other thing to do is if you're in a place with like landscape, if you go next to a tree, you can just lean your device on the tree, and that is stabilizing. If you don't have something that you can like literally put your phone on a top of, like when I'm going somewhere in West Virginia with a beautiful vista, a lot of times there's a guardrail between me and the drop. And so I will rest my phone on top of the guardrail. What do you get? Show us, Lindsay. Yeah,
Wait, I was
unmute.
muted. Sorry.
Yeah.
The selfie stick, if you were on the field course, you saw me carrying this around religiously. Um, I think this cost me $5. It's really inexpensive to get one of these, but they make a huge difference in the stability when you're trying to take video or photos out and about. But this was super nice, very compact, like it fits in anything, and it made my life so much easier.
Yeah, that is really helpful. So, yeah, your most low tech tool is your body. So you can also do something like try to rest your phone like on your own shoulder or next to your cheek. So if you have one side stabilized a little bit, that can also help you take a crisper image. I'm going to turn my attention to the series as a whole and talk about the upcoming sessions very briefly. I thank you so much for sharing your questions and sharing your thoughts this morning on those subjects. As Lindsay mentioned, a lot of the formulation for this series was predicated on building blocks. So learning how to think about taking an image and taking the images that you want to take will help you then place them in graphic design and things that you may need for digital representation or printed representation your for your objective, whether this is for your business, for your course, presentations, etc. So what we'll start off with is the photography base, because so much of storytelling and so much of how we want to communicate the human impact of the work that we do is through our communities, through our human communities, and of course maybe animal communities and forest communities and etc. So part of the ecosystem, right? Canva is a graphic design tool, and what we'll be covering is the free version of that tool. What that will look like is Chris Reiser will be the presenter for that session, and she's going to share her screen and show you what it looks like when you log into Canva and what the screen physically looks like when you're trying to create a flyer or a poster. Um, the following week, we're going to talk about Google Sites. So, in a lot of ways, this whole webinar series was born out of the realization that a lot of our students and alumni wanted an accessible way to share their business, their nonprofit, their work. And building a website is intimidating, and it can be expensive. But with your university email account, or if you have a Google email account through Gmail, Google has a free website software called Google Sites. And so Chris is also going to use that opportunity to show you how to build your own website and some of the considerations. That session particularly, you're going to get a little bit of pre-work to go into the session so that as you're seeing Chris walk through how to build that site, you can then think about all of your own photographs, your own graphic design needs, your own mission statements, your own, partners and information on, and you can be kind of working side by side. Then we're going to have two sessions that cover a broad range of social media practices. The first session is going to focus on traditional social media channels. So I'm going to talk about Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. And I'm going to go through how those different platforms can be used. How do you go in and create a post or schedule a post ahead of time? For some platforms, you can do it right in the platform. For others, you might need to use a social media scheduling tool. But we'll focus on what you can do with your own account and some of the considerations for creating effective communications using those channels. The following week, Lindsay is going to come and share with you how to use a YouTube channel or a YouTube video series and a webinar series. How, like, some of the considerations for setting up your own Zoom meeting or Zoom webinar series to have participatory engagement with your communities, and also to show, video media. I'm sure we can all tap into this knowledge, but video has become supreme in terms of storytelling and engagement. And there's, it just activates something in our brains that still photography elicits, but moving sequential imagery of video kind of locks in. So it's a really powerful tool. And as evidenced by all of you being here with us this morning and today, an engaging, convening software and series where you can both speak to and hear from your community, even if they're half a world away, is incredible for communication. And then we're going to end with a session. It's going to be a panel discussion on AI tools that can be used for communications. So again, as someone who's an artist, it makes me a little crazy when I see very blatant AI imagery. And it's perfect for memes, and it can be really a challenge to accept AI videos or AI images. But AI technologies, the investment in these technologies is not going away. And the utilization of these technologies to aid you in your work for communication is just getting started. So what we're going to do is kind of go over the ways that we have used AI. We're going to talk about thinking about ways to prompt an AI assistant to help you generate ideas for how to write, to help you synthesize information that you have. You can also use AI. So AI is basically like a supercomputer. So if you want to understand, if you have an audience and you know that they go to maybe other people's websites, for example, you can enter in those websites and ask an AI assistant to tell you what do those websites have in common, and then you'll know what you should include on your own. So that's just one of the, ideas that might come out of that session. And then I will just end by saying that each of these will be 1-hour sessions. We will have our presenters create about a 30-minute presentation. We'll open it up to questions or Q&A session for 5 to 10 minutes. And then, similar as we did this morning, then we're going to actually open it up to have an open discussion where we will come on and we will lift up the comments that you share in the chat. So as you have resources and experience or links to things that help in the subject matter, there'll be some peer-to-peer learning and sharing that goes on. And I think
Uh,
that's it for me. Lindsay, what have I missed?
um, I just wanted to, if I could share my screen, is that possible?
Yeah, I will. I'll allow it.
Thank you so much. Um, so I wanted to add that in addition to the webinar sessions, we have resources that we will also be sending to everyone via email to accompany these sessions. I believe there's at least one for every session, I think. But then also at the end of the session, I have been working on something really big to help everyone out. And what this is a list of resources for everyone that is either and these correspond to the sessions that we are having, but these are all digital tools from different companies. And there's a section, excuse me, that either has a zero cost option for students and nonprofits, and it will take you to the link to sign up to it. And so this is really, really helpful because, guys, this can save us and our organizations and our communities close to thousands of dollars. So I'm still working on this. It's not done yet, but at the end of the session, this is going to get sent to all of you. So if there is a specific tool that you are interested in, that you would like to have more information about, Please let me know, and I will look into that and see if there is a free or reduced version for students or nonprofits and get it on this list if there is the one available. But I just wanted to show this to you, like get excited about this because I'm super excited for it. I've wanted to do something like this for a long time, haven't had the opportunity to do so, but this webinar is giving me that opportunity, and I really hope that it's useful for you. And so if, like I said, if there's something that you've wanted, a software, some sort of a program, and you're like, this is just way too expensive, we can't afford it, let me know. I will put my email in the chat and I will look into it and see if there is a discount or free version for students and nonprofits. And please don't be afraid to ask because there might be 10 other students that are interested in this too. Um, so that's one of the resources that everyone will get in addition to a bunch of other really cool resources that accompany all of these webinar series. But Deborah, Corey asked, will there be information on how to link music to videos and how to use that more effectively?
I love that question. And the answer right now, Corey, is no. Only because we didn't include a video editing session for this, but it makes me feel like that might be a great session to have for season 2 of this webinar series. And I will be happy to teach you. And Lindsay, Corey also points out he would love the blank template of your spreadsheet. And I think what we can do after this concludes, I will make sure that all of you guys get that handout that Daniel created, and we'll ask Lindsay to give us just the blank template with the column titles. And so we'll send those to you this week, and then we will welcome you back next week at the same time, same place, with new and improved content. All right, great. Well, we will come back to you next week. We will also make sure to reshare the updated schedule just so we have perfect clarity. Thanks again so much for joining us today and for sharing what you've shared with us in the chat and the
Oh,
Q&A. Lindsay, thank you for all that you've done to prepare us and to help steward this. And I can't wait to be back with everybody next week.
yeah. Thanks for being here, everybody.
All right, take care. Have a great rest of the day, y'all.
See you later.
Bye.